Every life is shaped by an invisible force long before it ever shows up in visible results. Before the money, before the success, before the failure, before the struggle, there is a thought, a quiet, repeated idea you accepted as truth. And whether you realized it or not, that idea went to work. It chose your habits. It chose your reactions. It chose what you dared to want and what you convinced yourself was not for people like you. This is the truth most people never confront. Your life is not happening to you. It is responding to you, to what you believe is possible, to what you believe you deserve, to what you believe you are capable of holding when pressure arrives. Look around. The world you see is not random. It is a mirror, and the mirror does not lie. History has always whispered this lesson to those willing to listen. Edison failed thousands of times, not because he lacked intelligence, but because his belief was unshakable. He did not hope he would succeed, he expected to. Carnegie did not build steel empires by chance. He first built an iron certainty in his own mind. Lincoln lost elections, businesses, years of his life to defeat, but his belief in purpose outlasted every humiliation. Belief is not positive thinking. Belief is a decision repeated so often that doubt loses its voice. Most people never make that decision. They let the world program them instead. Family opinions, social expectations, past mistakes, old labels, quiet disappointments that calcify into identity. And slowly, subtly, the mind becomes a prison it never meant to build. The tragedy is not lack of talent, it is unmanaged belief. Your mind was designed to be a tool, not a master. But if you do not take control of it, it will obey the loudest influence around you: fear, media, comparison, comfort. And once that happens, you don't drift into failure overnight. You drift into it through small, reasonable excuses that feel safe in the moment and devastating in the long run. Every outcome you admire began as a mental image held with discipline. Every downfall began as a tolerated thought left unchallenged. This is where the turning point lives. When a person realizes that thoughts are not harmless and beliefs are not neutral, the game changes. Because belief is the architect of behavior. Behavior becomes habit. Habit becomes character. And character always decides destiny. You cannot outperform the image you hold of yourself. That is why clarity is power. The moment you define who you are becoming, confusion loses leverage. When Henry Ford said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right," he was not speaking in metaphor. He was describing a law that does not care about excuses or intentions, a law that responds only to conviction backed by action. The mind seeks evidence to confirm what it already believes. If you believe you are limited, it will find proof everywhere. If you believe you are capable, it will search relentlessly for ways to prove you right. The same world, the same circumstances, completely different results. This is why vision matters. Not wishful vision, not vague dreams, but a clear mental image held with emotional intensity. Walt Disney saw worlds before they existed. Others saw bankruptcy. He saw inevitability. And because he could see it, he could endure what others could not. Vision gives suffering meaning. Without it, discipline feels like punishment. With it, discipline becomes devotion. Discipline is not restriction. Discipline is alignment. It is choosing the future over the mood. It is training the mind to obey purpose instead of impulse. Every great builder of fortune understood this. They mastered themselves first, because no empire survives internal chaos. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall or climb to the level of your self-control. Belief without action is fantasy. Action without belief is exhaustion. But when belief and action lock together, momentum is born. And momentum silences doubt faster than any affirmation ever could. Still, the path is never straight. Setbacks arrive, markets change, plans break, criticism gets louder when progress becomes visible. This is where adaptability separates those who succeed from those who talk about potential forever. The strong do not cling to methods, they cling to purpose. They bend without breaking. They learn without losing identity. Every failure carries instruction, not punishment, instruction. Those who extract the lesson advance. Those who personalize the pain retreat. Gratitude plays a role here that few understand. Not gratitude as politeness, but as power. Gratitude stabilizes belief. It trains the mind to recognize progress even while climbing. It keeps ambition from rotting into desperation, and desperation is belief's enemy. When you are grateful, you are grounded. When you are grounded, you are dangerous in the best possible way. Over time, something shifts. The outer world begins to rearrange itself. Opportunities appear where resistance once lived. People respond differently. Confidence stops being something you force and becomes something you carry quietly. Not arrogance, certainty. This is the compound effect of controlled thought. The world will always try to tell you who you are. It will offer you smaller dreams dressed as realism. It will reward conformity and punish early conviction. But history never remembers the careful. It remembers the committed. You are becoming something every day, by default or by design. There is no pause button on identity. Control your mind and you command your direction. Leave it unmanaged and it will recycle old fears until they feel like truth. Belief is not magic, it is responsibility. And once you accept that responsibility, you step into authorship of your own life. Because in the end, you will not be remembered for what you wanted, but for what you believed strongly enough to build. And whatever you choose to believe next will begin choosing you in return. Most people wait for confidence before they act. But confidence is not the cause, it is the consequence. It is built in motion, not in comfort. The mind obeys evidence, and action is the loudest evidence you can give it. Every disciplined step you take sends a message to your subconscious. I am serious. And the subconscious listens. It always listens. Napoleon Hill understood this long before neuroscience gave it language. He knew that the subconscious mind does not argue. It accepts. It absorbs repetition. It obeys emotion. And once it accepts an idea as truth, it begins to organize your behavior, your perception, even your opportunities around that idea. This is why faith is not religious, it is psychological. Faith is belief fused with emotional certainty. When you hold an idea long enough with feeling, it stops being an idea and becomes an instruction. That is why drifting is the greatest enemy of success. Drifting is living without decision, without aim, without a fixed mental image of the person you are becoming. Drift long enough and life chooses for you. Your standards lower quietly. Your tolerance for dissatisfaction increases. And one day, you wake up surrounded by a life you never consciously chose. But the moment you decide, truly decide, drift loses its grip. Decision is the birth of power. It cuts through confusion. It forces the mind to align. It creates internal order. The most successful individuals in history were not always the smartest, the strongest, or the luckiest, but they were decisive. Once they chose a direction, they burned the mental bridges behind them. Retreat was no longer an option. Andrew Carnegie decided to master steel. Ford decided to democratize the automobile. Rockefeller decided to dominate oil. These were not casual interests, they were obsessions fueled by belief. And obsession, when disciplined, becomes genius. Your energy follows your focus. What you dwell on, you empower. What you fear, you rehearse. What you visualize, you rehearse emotionally. And the mind cannot distinguish vividly imagined experience from repeated physical experience. This is why visualization works, not as fantasy, but as training. See yourself acting with certainty before the world demands it of you. Feel the discipline before it becomes comfortable. Walk mentally into the life you are building again and again until the mind recognizes it as familiar territory. Familiarity breeds confidence. Purpose sharpens this process. Without purpose, effort scatters. With purpose, sacrifice becomes logical. Purpose is the reason you keep going when motivation fades, and motivation will fade. Every serious path includes seasons of silence, effort without applause, progress without validation. Only purpose survives those seasons. Discipline is what you do when nobody is watching. Character is what remains when nobody is rewarding you. And destiny is simply the accumulation of those unseen moments. There will be resistance, there always is, not because you are doing something wrong, but because growth demands tension. The mind resists change because change threatens the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. This is why old habits fight back hardest right before transformation. Do not negotiate with resistance. Do not wait for it to disappear. Move through it. Pain is temporary. Regret is patient. Resilience is not emotional toughness. It is belief under pressure. It is the refusal to let temporary failure rewrite permanent identity. Every great figure you admire faced moments where quitting felt reasonable. They simply chose not to agree with that feeling. And here is the hidden advantage. Adversity refines belief. When you survive difficulty without abandoning your vision, your confidence becomes grounded, no longer borrowed, no longer fragile, earned. Learning accelerates everything. The committed mind is always a student, not of trends, but of principles. Methods change, laws do not. Study cause and effect. Study human nature. Study yourself. Self-knowledge is leverage. Once you understand your patterns, you can interrupt them. Once you understand your triggers, you can redirect them. Gratitude anchors this entire process. Not passive gratitude, but deliberate recognition of progress. Gratitude keeps ambition clean. It prevents bitterness. It allows you to pursue more without hating where you are. The mind cannot hold gratitude and fear at the same time. Slowly, something undeniable happens. Your internal dialogue changes. The questions you ask yourself improve. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" it becomes, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of, "Can I really do this?" it becomes, "What's the next disciplined step?" This is self-mastery, quiet, controlled, unshakable. The world begins to respond differently, not because it changed, but because you did. People sense certainty. Opportunities align with clarity. Momentum compounds when belief is consistent. And eventually, you realize the truth you were always meant to learn. You were never chasing success. You were becoming the kind of person success cannot avoid.
And then there comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when you realize something profound has shifted inside you. The noise loses its power, the opinions soften, the urgency to prove yourself fades, not because you gave up, but because you no longer need permission. This is the moment belief matures. You stop chasing approval and start honoring alignment. You understand that speed is useless without direction, and effort is meaningless without intention. You no longer ask, "How fast can I get there?" You ask, "Who must I become to stay there?" This is where true power lives. The mind, once disciplined, becomes an ally instead of a battlefield. Thoughts no longer run wild, they line up. Fear still appears, but it no longer leads. Doubt still whispers, but it no longer decides. You understand that emotions are signals, not commands. And for the first time, you respond instead of react. This is control. Napoleon Hill wrote that riches begin in the mind, but he was never speaking only of money. He was speaking of richness of purpose, richness of self-command, richness of inner certainty. Because a person who controls their inner world cannot be enslaved by the outer one. You stop waiting for the right time. You realize time obeys action. You stop asking for motivation. You realize discipline is more reliable. You stop seeking clarity from outside. You realize clarity is built through commitment. You begin to move differently. Small actions become deliberate. Daily routines become sacred. Mornings are no longer rushed, they are claimed. Evenings are no longer wasted, they are reviewed. You measure progress not by applause, but by integrity. Did you do what you said you would do? Did you honor the standard you set? This is how self-respect is built, and self-respect is the foundation of confidence. The world does not reward potential, it rewards proof, and proof is delivered quietly, over time, by those who show up when enthusiasm is gone and only belief remains. Those who can sit alone with their vision without needing validation. Those who understand that the unseen work is what creates the visible result. At this level, patience stops feeling like waiting. It feels like preparation. You begin to trust the process, not blindly, but intelligently. You know that every discipline compounds, every thought repeated gains weight, every habit practiced becomes identity. You understand that shortcuts steal from the future, that consistency is not boring, it is unstoppable. And then, almost suddenly, the results appear, not as miracles, but as confirmations. The inner work reflects outward. The life you once imagined now feels familiar because you have lived it mentally for years. You are not surprised by success, you are ready for it. This is why belief must come first, because without belief, success feels foreign, and anything foreign is rejected. But when belief is established, success feels like home. You realize you were never weak, you were just undirected, never unmotivated, just unfocused, never unlucky, just undecided. The moment you took responsibility for your mind, everything else followed. And here is the final truth, the one that separates listeners from builders. Your mind will either be your greatest asset or your most expensive liability. There is no neutral ground. Every day, every thought, every reaction is a vote for the person you are becoming. The question is not whether you are changing, you are. The question is who is in control. If you control your mind, you shape your destiny. If you don't, your past will keep rewriting your future. So decide. Decide what you believe about yourself. Decide what you expect from life. Decide what you will tolerate and what you will no longer accept. Hold that belief. Feed it with discipline. Protect it with focus. Reinforce it with action. Because the world does not rise to meet your hopes. It aligns with your convictions. And once you understand this, once you live it, you stop asking for permission. You stop waiting for signs. You stop negotiating with fear. You move calmly, relentlessly, intentionally. You become living proof of a timeless law. You become what you believe. And from this moment forward, make sure that belief is worthy of your life.